So let me take a moment to introduce a good old friend of mine, Gordon Starr. We've known each other probably going on 35 years, and through many contexts and with different people and different worlds. And I've always loved this guy because he's just always been Gordon Starr. You know, he's never been anybody else. He's always, you know, there's Gordon and that's Gordon. And he was my coach in two areas of my life which were critical in my development. One was when I first joined Technico. I don't know how, but he always showed up in my office with asking me about my targets, goals, and objectives, and what was I doing. And he was available on the phone, so we spent some time. And then there was another interaction when I was downline and I was confused about the future. And he probably doesn't remember that, but that was life altering. So Gordon, why don't you introduce yourself and tell these folks about you a little bit?
Well, let's see. I've been involved in transformational consulting and coaching for a long time. You know, the work that I do is based on Werner Erhard's work, and I've been involved in that for 46 years now. You know, I started my business my consulting, I started in 1985, and what my work today is exclusively dedicated to empowering leaders, empowering business leaders who are up to something extraordinary. And I have a particular interest, which is transforming the paradigm of business such that business can fulfill on what we call its boundless potential to make a difference in the world, to make a difference with employees and their families, to make a difference, of course, with customers and suppliers and investors, to make a difference with communities, global society, and the environment. So it's dedicated to transforming the game of business, to maximizing short-term earnings for shareholders, to optimizing long-term well-being for all stakeholders. So that's what my work is up to, and it's dedicated to empowering visionary leaders.
When I look at leadership and all the leadership development that I've done working with leaders, there's the capacity to delegate, they abdicate, or they command. There's different ways, but always in the delegation part, if they're good, they also have to be able to coach. They have to be able to coach that person they made the request of to be able to fulfill that request, and they can't be on the field with that player. So they have to learn coaching at some level to be able to delegate effectively. What do you see in that? What have you noticed about great leaders and their capacity to do that?
I would say that delegating and managing and directing are a different domain of conversation than coaching. So coaching, the way we do coaching, the way we see coaching, is very distinct. It has to, and we define it as, you know, coaching is empowering the person that I'm coaching, and fulfilling on what matters to them, and fulfilling on their intentions, their commitment. Not what I think they should do, but on what they say is important to them. And what we mean by empower is a freedom to be, a freedom to act in ways that they hadn't before, in service of fulfilling what's important to them. And, you know, in terms of, and oftentimes coaching isn't at play in a boss-subordinate relationship. However, it can be really, really important. You know, I coached the CEO and chairman of a Fortune 100 company, and his main direct report ran a major division. He also earned multi-million dollars per year in salary, and I coached both of them, and they were at loggerheads with each other. however, you keep it pure to coach them and what they're committed to, then it can be highly successful. So oftentimes coaching may need to be somebody outside the work relationship. However, if a boss can set aside management and distinguish it from coaching and actually have a separate and distinct coaching conversation with the person that reports to them and have it along what's important to them so that the coaching isn't what I think should be important to you, but what actually is important to them, that can be highly successful.
What is the relationship that you see that a coach must generate with the player, and we're talking about external or internal, in order for that player to be successful? What are the elements, qualities, characteristics of that relationship between coach and player that is distinct?
Absolutely essential for great coaching is relationship. A relationship characterized by trust, characterized by respect, characterized by affinity. If you don't have that relationship, then you can't have an effective coaching relationship. You know, back many, many years ago in 1986, I had the privilege of producing, and this was before coaching and management or coaching in organizations or business became ubiquitous and so popular. We put together, with the organization I was working for then, we put together a roundtable with John Wooden, one of the, today, still one of the best coaches ever in NCAA basketball, Red Auerbach of the Boston Celtics, still one of the top professional basketball coaches ever. Tim Galway, the inner game of tennis. George Allen, professional football. Werner Erhard was there as part of the panel to represent coaching in the organization. And, you know, when you looked at George Allen and Red Auerbach and John Wooden working with type A, hardcore male people, they loved their players. You know, love was there. They talked about love. And, you know, John Wooden said, you know, there's some of my players I don't like particularly well, but there's not one of them I don't love. And there's something about that, you know, what we have as sort of like a mantra that, you know, accomplishment is a product of relationship. Relationship is the foundation for accomplishment. And without being able to be authentic, without being able to operate with integrity, without being able to say whatever there is there to say and work it out, without being free to be dislocating in your conversations because you're coaching somebody to go beyond their comfort zone. So that's dislocating. It's a disruptive conversation, and you have to have that relationship to be able to go places where you can't otherwise go with somebody.
They say listening is more powerful than speaking. Yeah. As I listen to you, you're saying my words.
Yes.
Probably a little better than I would, by the way. Yeah, because that seems to be the fundamental principle of life. And if you're not in line with that, it's not going to work.
You know, my wife said something to me. I've been married almost 50 years. And the best trainer I've had in my entire life on listening is my wife. How come? She's brutal with me. When I don't listen, she lets me know. And, you know, literally 2 weeks ago, she said, Gordon, I'd just like you to listen. So I listened. And I listened, and she talked, and of course, my brain was coming up with solutions to what she was talking about, but I kept my mouth shut and I just listened. And then I had this really good idea, but I still listened. And then at the very end, after she got done talking, I said, thank you. I said, you might consider. And she said, Gordon, I just asked you to listen. And she said, here's what you got to get. She says, when you listen to me and really listen to me, I can hear myself talk. And when I hear myself talk, I can see things that I couldn't otherwise see. And I can discover my own resolution to whatever I'm grappling with. So, there's magic in listening.
Listening is, it takes a while to learn how to listen.
Yes.
And I don't know if it's age related. I don't know if it's intellectually related. I certainly emotionally related.
Yes.
But I hear much different now than I did even 5 years ago.
Yes.
I have more tolerance, which is, for me, remarkable. It's like, oh.
Yes.
So in the work you're doing, you've begun the distinction between coaching and management and leadership. Could you put a little more definitive lines between those so that people see them coaching as distinct?
I often think of what you just asked me in terms of a Venn diagram. And, you talked about coaching.
Okay.
And the three overlap. And then there's that point in the middle where the three come together. So I see leadership, coaching as leadership. Just like listening, you can listen, you can lead through listening, and you can coach through listening, and you can manage through listening. So listening is, one of those things that's common in the center. And, management is essential. What does management do? Well, management is inside the 9 dots. It's inside the box, and it's getting better and more efficient and constant improvement. And you get a new idea. When this first thing, the conversation for this thing was in the mid-1990s, before the internet was even ubiquitous, right? So way outside the box, but once it comes in the box, then you have all the management necessary to produce it and bring everything together and have it scale and be mass marketing. So all of that's absolutely essential. Leadership is operating outside the 9 dots, going someplace that hasn't been gone before. It's realize, as Werner Erhard would define it in his work on being a leader and the effective exercise of leadership, he would define leadership as realizing a future that would not have happened within the prevailing context, and a future which fulfills or contributes to fulfilling the concerns, matters of importance to all the parties that are affected, the relevant parties. So that's a different game than management. It's bringing a new future into a reality. Management is taking a predictable future and making it more and better and different. In coaching, you can coach a manager, you can coach a leader, you can coach an athlete, and coaching is empowering somebody in something that really matters to them, an intention, a commitment that's important to them, whether it be leadership or whether it be management. And great leaders coach and great managers coach. And great coaches coach leaders and managers. So that's what I'd say.
I think with the Me Too movement, women have been redefining themselves more clearly or distinguishing themselves. And there hasn't been a lot of work for men to distinguish themselves, to see who am I in this world that we're moving into. What do you see about that? What do you see about being a man in 2019?
That's really an interesting question. I'll tell you what my initial take without having thought about it is that men have to reinvent themselves. And it's absolutely essential. I think women in business are absolutely essential for peak performance. Women as leaders in business. And that takes men reinventing themselves. It's been 400 years of men running the show. And if you're really interested in business fulfilling on its potential as a man, you've got to genuinely, authentically open yourself up and seek the unique contribution of women.
It's also opportunity. You know, it's like, where do men go to find out who they need to be in a new world? Because the context that they go back into is always the one that gave them who they are now. It's like, okay, what does that mean?
Mark, I was reading as I was waiting for you to pop on. Just now, I was reading a perfect example of what you and I are talking about. And it was an example in Arizona with a police officer and a 12-year-old girl who was a reporter for a magazine in Pennsylvania. And she was reporting on her iPhone some really untoward, hard-handed stuff going on with the police officer. And the police officer started threatening her. He's going to throw her in juvie. And she stood up to him and she said, "What am I doing that's illegal?" And then he gave her some bullshit, which is totally inaccurate. And now it's all over the paper. So this is a 12-year-old girl who she's experiencing the power of her voice being heard directly into disrupting a male-dominated world. I'm the cop, you do what I say, or I'm going to throw you in juvie. And then we have all the press. I mean, it's a new world. And that little thing that I just read is sort of like right at the heart of it.
What is it that they think they're going to lose by change?
Yeah.
You know, that's the first question. Like, what does that mean? And the second is, what might be possible? And, you know, I just know that a reinvention, a redesign of men needs to be a broader conversation than succumbing to whatever is going on out there. There's no creativity here for men in developing who I am in the world today against the Me Too context, and they ought to have that. I mean, we kicked the shit out of them for years. Now, you know, they ought to have that freedom.
Now that you say that, I don't know whether you remember this from the Hunger Project, but Werner distinguished position from stand. And the way he spoke about it in the Hunger Project was, okay, there's a position, hunger should be ended. And it must be ended, and it can be ended. And what that position evokes is the contrary position. No, it can't. It's impossible. It's not even desirable to end hunger. And if it was desirable, we can't do it. It's inevitable. So you get this versus a stand that hunger can be ended. And it would be great to end hunger. Now, the first people we want to talk to are all the people that say it can't be ended. Come on in. Let's talk. We want to find out what you see because we can learn from it. So it takes it totally out of the right-wrong. And I see the Me Too movement being, oh no, not you two.
You just, okay.
Yeah. As
perfect.
Right-wrong versus a stand that could be taken, which is, you know, our voices matter. So now let's sit down and talk, guys.